They said the Morgans had the perfect marriage. But perfection has a price, and soon, someone was going to pay it. The next few days passed quietly inside the Morgan mansion. Maria continued to smile, attending meetings, recording commercials, appearing on magazine covers, but behind those glossy images, her husband had started to change. Eli spoke less. He smiled less. And when he did, it no longer reached his eyes. Sophia noticed first. Late one evening, as Maria worked in her studio, Eli sat alone in his office, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him, staring blankly at the glowing city skyline. Sophia entered quietly, carrying a folder. She paused at the doorway, watching him for a moment before speaking softly. "Sophia, you've been sitting there for hours, sir. Should I bring dinner?" Eli, without looking up, "No. Just thinking." "Sophia, about her?" Eli's silence was her answer. Sophia stepped closer, voice low, almost soothing. "Sophia, everyone sees her success, but they don't see what it does to you. Always in her shadow. Always second." Eli looked up sharply, as if the thought had always been there but no one had ever dared to say it aloud. "Eli, she doesn't mean to overshadow me. She just, Sophia, does it anyway." Smiling faintly, because that's who she is. Perfect Maria. Their eyes met, not in affection, but in shared resentment. That's how it began. Not with love. Not even lust. But with understanding, the kind that feels like poison disguised as comfort. Weeks passed. Sophia became more than just Maria's assistant. She was now Eli's late-night companion, listening, sympathizing, and quietly shaping his anger into justification. They met discreetly, in his office after midnight, in the car on business trips, in hotel corridors far from the mansion. Their conversations were whispered, filled with danger and desire. "Sophia, you deserve more, Eli. You built her up, you stood by her, and now she acts like you're just another employee. Eli, she trusts me completely. She doesn't even see what she's doing. Sophia, that's what makes it easier." Camera pans across a scene, Sophia's hand brushing Eli's as she passes him a glass of wine. Their touch lingers too long. He doesn't pull away. Their affair was quiet, but deadly. The kind that feeds on guilt, yet grows stronger in silence. Maria began noticing the changes. Eli no longer looked her in the eyes when she spoke. He started working late almost every night. And sometimes, when she entered the room unexpectedly, he would end a phone call too quickly. "Maria, who keeps calling so late?" Eli, without hesitation, "Just investors. You know how demanding they are." Maria, I see." Her tone was calm, but her heart was uneasy. Even their baby seemed to sense the tension, crying at night until Maria held him, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here." Meanwhile, in another room, Eli texted Sophia beneath the sheets. She suspects nothing. One afternoon, Maria invited Eli to her office to discuss something important. The air felt heavy, the kind of heaviness before a storm. "Maria, I've been thinking about our future, Eli. About our son." Eli, "Okay, Maria, I'm rewriting my will, to make sure his inheritance is secure, just in case anything happens to me." Eli froze. For a split second, his expression slipped, panic, disbelief, greed. Then he forced a smile. "Eli, that's very responsible of you." "Maria, I'll include you as trustee, of course." Eli, "Of course." For Maria, it was a gesture of love. For Eli, it sounded like a countdown. That night, he met Sophia again. Rain fell outside, soft at first, then harder, pounding against the windows like a warning. Eli poured 2 glasses of wine, but his hands trembled slightly. "Eli, she's changing her will." Sophia, carelessly swirling her glass, "And?" Eli, "Everything goes to the baby. I'll be trustee, but if she ever leaves," Sophia, interrupting, smiling, "then you'll be in control." Eli, that's not what I meant. Sophia, isn't it? She moved closer, her voice a whisper that curled around his weakness. Sophia, you've given her your best years. You've built her empire. And now she wants to make sure you get nothing. Tell me, Eli, doesn't that feel unfair? Eli said nothing. His jaw tightened, his heart racing. Sophia's hand touched his face gently. Sophia, if she's gone, pause, everything's yours. Silence followed, thick, suffocating. The words lingered like smoke, impossible to ignore. Eli turned away, staring out at the rain. Somewhere deep inside him, something shifted, a dark acceptance that he couldn't admit, even to himself. Days later, Maria sensed the final distance forming. At breakfast, Eli barely spoke. Sophia arrived unusually early, saying she needed to review Maria's schedule. The air was awkward, heavy with unspoken things. Maria looked at Eli, his eyes cold, distracted, and forced a small smile. Maria, you've been quiet lately. Eli, just tired. Maria, from work? Eli, from everything. She reached for his hand. He didn't reach back. They say betrayal doesn't happen suddenly, it begins with silence, with small lies that grow roots beneath smiles. That evening, Maria wrote a note in her planner, talk to Eli. Reconnect. But the conversation would never come. Because someone else, someone standing just behind the door, had already written a different ending. Eli, she's rewriting everything. If this goes through, I'll have nothing. Sophia, voice, calm and low, then don't let it go through. Eli, what are you saying? Sophia, after a pause, you know exactly what I'm saying. He closes his eyes. The rain continues to fall, washing down his face like guilt, or maybe just a rehearsal for the tears to come. That night, the last bit of love left Eli Morgan's heart. And what replaced it, was something far darker. Would you trust someone who smiles like Eli? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Because next, the mask comes off, and the nightmare begins. They said Maria Morgan had everything, love, money, and peace. But sometimes, peace hides poison. At 27, Maria was living a life many dreamed of. She was beautiful, brilliant, and a self-made billionaire who built a luxury perfume empire from scratch. Her husband, Eli Morgan, 42, was charming and charismatic, the kind of man who turned heads at every event. Together, they looked flawless, the ultimate power couple. But behind the shimmering smiles and magazine covers, small fractures had begun to form, the kind that the world couldn't see. The day began with sunlight pouring into the kitchen. Maria, still in her silk robe, gently fed their 6-month-old baby. Her laughter filled the air, soft, comforting, maternal. Then Eli entered, crisp suit, confident walk, phone in hand. He kissed her forehead, glanced at the baby, and then at the clock. Eli, still here? I thought you had that investor meeting by 9. Maria, I postponed it. I wanted to have breakfast with you too. Eli, with a faint smile, sweet. But next time, stick to your schedule. Investors don't like last-minute changes. His tone was smooth, but the edge was sharp, subtle, controlling. Maria smiled anyway, hiding her discomfort the way women in love often do. Just then, Sophia, Maria's personal assistant, entered with a tablet. Early 30s. Polished. Beautiful in a quiet way. Sophia, good morning, sir. Ma'am, I've uploaded today's reports. Maria, thank you, Sophia. Just leave them on the counter. For a brief moment, Eli's eyes met Sophia's. A flicker passed between them, barely noticeable. But real. Maria didn't see it. She was too busy wiping baby food from her son's chin, humming softly. Later that day, Maria worked in her office surrounded by vision boards and fragrance samples. Her laptop glowed with numbers, her empire was expanding faster than she imagined. Eli entered, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked at her screen, pretending to be casual. Eli, you've been at this since morning. don't overwork yourself. Maria, just finalizing the distribution deal. If this goes through, it could double revenue this quarter. Eli, chuckling, our revenue, right? Maria, of course. Everything I have is ours. He smiled, but not with pride. Behind that smile was the quiet sting of inadequacy. He leaned closer, and the reflection of Maria's account balance flashed across his eyes, a 7-figure sum. Something inside him darkened. Eli, impressive. You're becoming the breadwinner now. Maria, teasing, maybe just this once. Eli, half smile, yeah, sure. As he turned away, the camera lingered on his face. The grin stayed, but the warmth was gone. In that moment, love began turning into resentment. That evening, the Morgans attended a charity gala, glitter, champagne, camera flashes. The announcer introduced them as the most admired couple in the state. They waved, smiled, and played their roles perfectly. But when an investor congratulated Maria for her new global deal, Eli's jaw tightened. Investor, Maria, you've built an empire in just 3 years. What's your secret? Maria, hard work, and a supportive husband. Eli, cutting in, smiling, we built this together. The crowd laughed politely. Maria forced a smile. But her eyes, for a brief second, reflected the truth. She felt her success shrinking under his pride. When the cameras turned away, Eli whispered through his teeth. Don't forget who managed your first investment. Maria, of course not. Softly. But she knew. That first investment had been hers. Entirely. Back at the mansion, the baby was asleep. The glow of city lights painted silver lines across their bedroom. Maria sat at her vanity, removing her jewelry. Eli stood by the window, his reflection shadowed in the glass. She tried to start a light conversation. Maria, maybe we should take a break, just the 3 of us. The lake house, maybe? Eli, distracted, the lake house, sure. His tone was empty, distant. Maria watched him through the mirror, handsome, quiet, unreadable. She smiled faintly. He didn't smile back. Later that night, when Maria finally drifted to sleep, Eli lay awake beside her. His eyes were open, fixed on her laptop glowing faintly on the bedside table. He hesitated for a moment, then reached over and opened it. The numbers lit up the screen, 7 zeros, multiple accounts, all under her name. His expression hardened. He scrolled through her company documents, property deeds, and trust funds, everything signed Maria E. Morgan. His breathing grew shallow. He stared at her peaceful face. Eli, whispering, all this should have been mine. He shut the laptop slowly, his reflection in the black screen revealing something new, a man who had just crossed an invisible line in his heart. The next morning, Maria woke up early to prepare for a photo shoot. She walked past Eli, who sat in the study pretending to read the news. Her perfume lingered in the air, delicate, expensive, intoxicating. Eli watched her go, his eyes following not with love, but calculation. To the world, Eli Morgan was a loving husband. But deep inside, his admiration was turning into envy, the kind that slowly devours love and breeds something far darker. Outside, photographers snapped shots of Maria leaving the house with Sophia and her baby. Eli smiled at them from the doorway, the perfect husband once again. Then, as soon as the car disappeared down the driveway, his smile faded. He turned, walked back into the study, and stared out the window in silence. The music faded, leaving only the faint ticking of a clock. Eli glances at Maria's laptop one more time. The screen shows her account balance again, millions in her name. He whispers under his breath. Eli, it should have been mine. If this looks like the perfect marriage to you, comment where you're watching from, the truth's about to unfold. Subscribe now, because soon, the mask begins to crack. The forest around the cabin was still. The kind of stillness that holds its breath before something terrible happens. Inside, the dim light flickered over Maria's motionless body on the floor. Her wine glass lay shattered beside her, a dark red trail spreading across the wooden planks, a quiet echo of the life being drained from her. Eli knelt beside her, not out of concern but calculation. He touched her neck, felt for a pulse, and whispered, "Still warm." His tone was clinical, almost detached, as if she were a problem to be solved rather than a wife betrayed. The door creaked open behind him. Sophia stepped in, her eyes swollen, her hands trembling. "Eli," she whispered. "What did you do?" Eli didn't answer immediately. He just stood up, his shadow stretching long and dark across the floor. "What I had to," he said finally. "You wanted her gone, didn't you?" Sophia flinched, shaking her head. "Not like this. I thought you'd just scare her, not kill her." Eli's lips curled into a thin smile. "It's not killing," he said softly. "It's cleaning up a mistake." Sophia dropped to her knees beside Maria, tears streaming down her face. "She was kind to me," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Maria's face. "She trusted me." Eli's voice hardened. "Don't start feeling things now. We've come too far. You wanted freedom. You wanted money. This is how it happens." He crouched and looked Sophia in the eyes, his tone sharp as glass. "You don't get to cry now. You play your part, and you stay quiet. Understand?" Sophia nodded weakly, but her eyes said otherwise. Fear had replaced every drop of confidence she once had. Outside, the forest whispered as night deepened. Eli wrapped Maria's limp body in a sheet, his movements methodical. Sophia stood frozen, watching him lift her like she weighed nothing, like she was no longer human. He opened the back door and stepped into the darkness, his breath visible in the cold air. Sophia followed, clutching her arms, whispering, "This isn't right, Eli, this isn't right." Eli didn't look back. "It's done," he said. "We bury the problem, and it disappears. No one will ever know." They walked through the woods under a half-moon glow. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Eli carried Maria's body in silence, Sophia trailing behind, her sobs barely audible. When they reached a clearing, Eli dropped the sheet onto the ground beside a half-dug hole. He picked up a shovel and began to dig deeper, each metallic thud echoing like a countdown. Sophia turned away, tears blurring her vision. She could still hear the faint clink of jewelry, Maria's bracelet, as Eli moved her body into the shallow grave. Her mind screamed to stop him, to confess, to undo what they'd done. But fear chained her in place. As the first handfuls of dirt hit Maria's face, Sophia broke down. "Eli, please. She's still breathing." Eli froze. He looked down, and for a brief moment, there was movement, a faint rise and fall of her chest, a weak gasp of air escaping her lips. Eli's face twisted in panic, then fury. "No," he hissed. "No second chances." He shoved more dirt over her, faster this time, his breathing ragged. Sophia's scream pierced the night, a sound swallowed quickly by the vast emptiness around them. The shovel hit the ground one last time. Eli stood over the grave, chest heaving, face streaked with sweat and dirt. Sophia fell to her knees, sobbing. He looked down at her coldly. "It's over," he said. "You'll thank me one day." She didn't respond. Her tears hit the soil, the same soil that now covered Maria Morgan. The woods went silent. Not even the wind dared move. Then, a sound. Faint. Fragile. Heart-stopping. A baby's cry, distant, echoing through the night, as if the earth itself had remembered what Eli tried to bury. Eli froze. His eyes darted toward the car. "The baby," he muttered. Sophia looked at him, horrified. "You left him inside?" The cry grew louder, sharper, slicing through the silence like a warning. For the first time, Eli's mask cracked, fear flickered behind his eyes. The baby's cry echoed again, closer this time. "If you're praying she survives, drop your country in the comments, we're in this together." Don't miss what happens next, hit subscribe before the next act begins. They drove out of the city in a glossy black SUV, the kind that reflected money, class, and control, Eli's favorite kind of reflection. The weekend retreat had been his idea, just us, he'd said, to reconnect, to breathe again. Maria wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the man she had married, the man who once held her through sleepless nights after childbirth, still existed somewhere beneath the cold silences that now lived in their home. The air in the car was thick with unspoken truths. Eli's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Maria, sitting beside him, scrolled through photos of their baby on her phone, a small smile on her lips. She didn't notice the quick glance Eli gave her, or how his eyes flickered, calculating. Back at home, Sophia was working in Eli's study. The light from the desk lamp carved half her face into shadow. On the table lay a neat stack of insurance papers, one bearing Maria's name, another for the baby. She tapped a pen against the desk, her red nails catching the light. Once this is done, she whispered to herself, we'll finally be free. She paused, not out of guilt, but out of fear. She knew Eli's charm was dangerous, but so was his ambition. And now, she was in too deep. The cabin was quiet when they arrived, too quiet. The woods around it stretched endlessly, and the only sound was the faint whistle of wind against the windows. Maria felt a strange pull in her gut. Something was wrong, though she couldn't name it. Eli played the perfect husband, lighting candles, pouring wine, smiling too much. It was almost convincing. Almost. Maria walked around the cabin, her fingers brushing the wood walls, eyes lingering on the fire crackling in the hearth. It's beautiful, she said softly. You always know how to pick places like this. Eli smiled, a hollow, practiced smile. You deserve the best, Maria. She nodded, though a flicker of uncertainty clouded her eyes. She noticed his phone light up on the counter, Sophia's name. Her heart skipped. Eli noticed her glance and quickly pocketed the phone. Business, he said too quickly. Maria didn't argue, but she didn't believe him either. Dinner was quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, it was waiting. Maria lifted her glass of red wine as Eli watched her. He smiled, his voice low and steady. To us, and to a new beginning. She hesitated, just a second too long, before clinking her glass against his. They drank. Outside, the wind picked up, and the fire inside flickered. Maria blinked once, twice. Her fingers twitched slightly around the stem of her glass. Her vision blurred. The edges of Eli's face started to warp. Eli. I don't feel right, she murmured, trying to steady herself. He stood, his smile darkening into something colder. It's okay, he said softly. Just rest, Maria. You've worked too hard. Her hand trembled. The glass slipped and shattered on the floor. She stumbled backward, eyes wide with panic, but her legs wouldn't move properly. Her voice was breaking between gasps. What did you do to me? Eli's silence was the loudest sound in the room. Maria's body swayed, her fingers clawing at the table before she collapsed to the floor, her last sight being the shadow of her husband standing over her. Her hand twitched once before going still. Eli leaned over her and whispered, You should have shared your fortune. If your heart just dropped, comment still here, so I know you're watching. Things are about to get darker, and Maria's story is far from over. It was supposed to be a romantic weekend trip. Maria, Eli, and their 6-month-old baby boy drove out to their quiet countryside villa. The moonlight spilled across the road, soft and silver. Maria smiled, believing this was Eli's way of rekindling their love, a new beginning. But that night, the beginning became an ending. After dinner, Eli poured her a glass of wine, his voice gentle, his smile flawless. They toasted to forever. Minutes later, Maria's hand trembled. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The room began to spin. Eli, she whispered, confused, her voice fading. He leaned close, his tone colder now. It'll all be over soon, love. Her world went black. When Maria woke, she couldn't move. Her wrists were tied. Her mouth was gagged. Cold air pressed against her skin. Then she heard it, the scrape of a shovel, the weight of falling dirt. Through the wooden lid above her, Eli's laughter echoed faintly, distorted by soil and betrayal. And then, a sound that shattered her soul. Her baby's cry, soft but desperate, beside her in the dark. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she realized the truth. The man she loved was burying her, and their son, alive. Above ground, Sophia stood frozen, tears streaking down her cheeks, whispering, "Eli, stop, please." But Eli kept shoveling. Each thud of dirt against the coffin lid was the sound of trust dying, the sound of betrayal sealing the grave. If this gripped your heart, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I want to see who's still breathing after that twist. Don't forget to share this story and subscribe to Billionaire's Enclave, where love, lies, and justice collide in ways you'll never forget. Darkness. Not the kind that comes with night, but the kind that feels alive. The kind that presses against your chest until breathing becomes a fight. Somewhere deep beneath that suffocating silence, Maria Morgan floated between life and death. Her heartbeat was faint, a slow, fading drumbeat echoing in the black. Thump, thump. In the distance of her fading mind, memories flickered, not of fear, but of love. The first time Eli held her hand. The sparkle in his eyes when she said yes to his proposal. The laughter that once filled their mansion. The tiny fingers of their newborn wrapping around hers. Each memory became a lifeline, a spark of light piercing through the darkness closing around her. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of her baby's laugh played in her head, faint but real. She wanted to move, to fight, to breathe again. Her body didn't respond, but her spirit refused to let go. Far above, the night was still. The trees swayed gently under a ghostly moon. A man named Hakim, gray-bearded and weary, walked along the dirt path leading to his small cabin. He carried a rusted lantern that swung with each step, its light cutting soft circles into the night. He hummed an old song to himself, a habit from years of loneliness. But tonight, the air felt wrong. He stopped. The forest had gone silent. Even the crickets had stopped singing. Hakim turned slowly, holding the lantern higher. The woods stretched endlessly, shadows dancing between the trees. He frowned. "That's odd," he muttered. Then he heard it, faint, distant, carried on the wind. A sound that didn't belong to the forest. A cry. Soft. Fragile. Echoing from somewhere deep in the dark. Hakim froze. His pulse quickened. What in God's name? He turned in the direction of the sound, holding his breath. It came again, clearer now. Not an animal. Not the wind. It was a baby. Back beneath the soil, Maria's mind flickered again. The darkness rippled. She felt her chest tighten, then release. A whisper formed in her thoughts, "Not yet. I can't leave him." The sound of her baby crying reached her heart before it reached her ears. Somehow, she heard it. Somehow, it gave her strength. Her hand twitched. Just once. Enough to move a thin layer of earth. Up above, Hakim began walking faster, his boots crunching through leaves and mud. He followed the sound, his lantern swinging wildly now. He stumbled over a root but didn't stop. The crying grew louder, piercing the stillness. "Hold on," he whispered breathlessly. "Whoever you are. I'm coming." His light flickered, but he didn't slow down. The night seemed to bend toward him, as if guiding him to the source. Back below, Maria's heartbeat stumbled but didn't stop. Her mind filled with flashes, the day her son was born, his first cry, his first smile. Her lips moved faintly, barely audible. "My baby." A tear escaped her closed eyes, mixing with the soil around her face. Then, another sound. A crunch above. Footsteps. Someone was there. Hakim stopped just a few feet away from a mound of disturbed earth. The baby's cry echoed louder than ever. He lowered his lantern, eyes wide. What is this?" he whispered, heart pounding. If that sound gave you chills, type the exact time you're watching this in the comments. I want to know who's still with Maria right now. Don't move, the next act changes everything. The world mourned Maria Morgan. Newspapers carried her smiling photo. TV anchors spoke with solemn tones about her tragic passing. Candles flickered outside her company's headquarters, and employees whispered prayers for the woman who built an empire out of compassion. But Maria wasn't dead. She was sitting in the dim light of Hackham's cabin, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching her own funeral stream live on a small cracked tablet. On the screen, Eli Morgan stood at the podium, dressed in black, his eyes red from fake tears. He held their baby's photo, the same baby he left to die, and said, "Maria was light itself. And I will honor her by continuing her work." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in on his trembling hands, the perfect image of a grieving husband. Beside him, Sophia stood silently, wearing a black dress and dark glasses, pretending to be the devoted assistant. But Maria saw it, the subtle smile hiding behind her lowered head. Maria's eyes darkened. Her voice was cold, steady. "Play your part, Eli," she whispered to the screen. "I'll play mine." Days turned into weeks. Maria healed slowly, her strength returning alongside her fury. Hackham helped her move to a safe apartment in the city, small but secure, a place from which she could watch everything unfold. Her first call wasn't to a friend or a family member. It was to her lawyer, Mr. Davis, the only man she'd trusted before everything fell apart. He answered in disbelief. "Maria? You're alive?" "I am," she said quietly. "And I need your help. But no one can know." "Not yet." They met in secret that night, in the back of an empty cafe closed for renovation. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence as Maria slid a small flash drive across the table. "This," she said, "contains proof. Bank statements, insurance forms, and messages between Eli and Sophia. He forged my signatures. He changed my policies. I need you to make sure none of this disappears." Davis scrolled through the files on his laptop, his face pale. "Maria, if this gets out, he's finished." Maria's gaze was cold. "I don't want him finished. I want him exposed." Meanwhile, at the Morgan mansion, Eli was living his new widower's life in luxury. Sophia had moved in quietly, her presence explained to the press as helping him grieve. Reporters adored their bond. Rumors spread that she was helping him heal. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. Eli was paranoid, locking his doors twice, checking the windows, and staring at shadows that seemed to move on their own. At night, he'd wake up sweating, hearing faint whispers, Maria's voice in his dreams, calling his name. "Eli." He'd sit up, breathless, telling himself it wasn't real. But guilt had a sound, and it never stopped echoing. In her small apartment, Maria sat before a mirror. The woman who stared back looked different now, not the billionaire socialite everyone adored, but a survivor. She tied her hair back, straightened her posture, and looked into her own eyes. This time, she murmured, "I don't need pity. I need power." She spent her days rebuilding in silence, contacting old allies, retrieving data from her company's encrypted servers, piecing together the empire Eli thought he'd stolen. Hackham visited occasionally, bringing groceries and quiet encouragement. "You're doing God's work," he said once. Maria smiled faintly. "No," she replied. "I'm doing justice." Back at the mansion, Eli raised his glass of champagne during a private dinner with Sophia. "To new beginnings," he said, smirking. Sophia clinked her glass weakly, a flicker of unease in her eyes. "You ever think about her?" Eli's grin faltered for a second before returning. "She's gone. We move on." But outside, unseen by them, a black car sat parked across the street. Inside, Maria watched through tinted windows, her face half hidden by the shadows. Her baby slept in the back seat, safe. Maria whispered softly, "Enjoy the peace while it lasts, Eli. You buried me once, but now I'm the ghost you can't escape." As Eli laughed inside the mansion, he looks at the TV behind him, the evening news announcing an anonymous whistleblower threatening to expose corruption in the Morgan Foundation. Eli's smile fades. He looks toward the window, sensing someone watching. If you're ready to see justice, hit the like button and comment "Justice is coming," because the ghost of Maria Morgan is just getting started. The night was heavy with silence, except for the faint, heartbreaking cry that led Hakim to the mound of freshly disturbed earth. His lantern trembled in his shaking hand as he knelt. The soil was loose, uneven. His instincts screamed that someone, was beneath. He placed his ear close to the ground. There it was again, weak, muffled, alive. His heart raced. "Dear God," he whispered. Hakim dropped his lantern and began to dig with his bare hands. The dirt was cold, clinging to his fingers as he clawed deeper. Sweat and tears blurred his vision, but he didn't stop. Then, a gasp. A woman's hand. Pale, trembling, clutching at the air as if reaching for life itself. Hakim froze for only a second before tearing through the rest of the soil, uncovering Maria's face, streaked with mud and faintly moving. Her lips parted, pulling in a broken breath that sounded like a prayer. He lifted her gently, brushing dirt from her face. You're all right, ma'am. Stay with me." Maria coughed, the world spinning in and out of focus. Her eyes fluttered open, locking onto his face. "My baby," she rasped. Hakim looked around frantically, and there, wrapped in a small, dirt-covered blanket, the baby whimpered. He scooped the infant up, his hands trembling. "He's alive. Oh, dear Lord, he's alive." Maria sobbed weakly, clutching her child as Hakim wrapped his coat around them both. The lantern light flickered over the three of them, the image of rebirth in the heart of darkness. Hakim carried them to his small cabin, a humble wooden structure lit by a single oil lamp. He laid Maria on a cot near the fire, her baby nestled beside her. For the first time, warmth touched her skin again. Hakim offered her water. She sipped slowly, her hands shaking. Why did you help me?" she asked weakly. He smiled softly. "I heard a cry. You don't ignore a cry like that." Maria's eyes filled with tears, of gratitude, of pain, of disbelief that she was still breathing. "He buried me," she whispered. "My husband. Eli. He did this." Hakim's face hardened. "Then the devil himself wears fine suits these days." She nodded slowly, pressing a trembling kiss to her baby's forehead. "I can't go to the police yet," she murmured. "He'll find a way to twist it. He always does. I need to be smart. I need proof." Hakim leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "You've been given a second chance, ma'am. Use it well." Maria looked up at him, a flicker of strength returning to her eyes. "I will. For my son. For the truth." Days passed quietly in the woods. Hakim brought her food, clothes, and a phone he barely knew how to use. Maria slowly regained her strength. She watched the news from a small TV set in the corner of the cabin, her heart breaking with every headline. Billionaire philanthropist Maria Morgan presumed dead in tragic accident. Heartbroken husband Eli Morgan speaks out. The screen showed Eli, dressed in black, eyes glistening, voice breaking with grief. He sat in front of cameras, holding a framed photo of Maria and their baby. "She was my everything," he said, his tone heavy with false emotion. "My world ended that night." Maria's jaw tightened. Her hands clenched around the edge of the blanket. The same man who buried her alive was now crying on national television, playing the grieving widower. Hakim turned toward her, his brows furrowed. "That him?" Maria's voice was low but sharp. "That's him." The baby stirred softly beside her as she whispered, "He thinks he buried me. But I'm not done yet." The TV zooms in on Eli's tear-streaked face as he says, "I'll honor her memory, for as long as I live." Maria stares at the screen, eyes burning with resolve. "I'll make sure those words come true," she says coldly. Fade to black. Would you forgive a man like this? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed, because Maria's revenge has only just begun. The Morgan mansion was quieter than it had ever been, but not peaceful. The silence there carried a weight, a whisper that neither Eli nor Sophia could ignore. Sophia woke up in the middle of the night again, drenched in sweat. In her dreams, Maria stood at the foot of her bed, face pale, eyes open, whispering her name. Why, Sophia? She'd wake with a scream lodged in her throat, clutching the sheets, gasping for air. But when she turned beside her, Eli wasn't there. He'd taken to sleeping in the guest room lately, muttering about needing space. The same man who once swore he'd give her the world now barely looked at her. When he did, his eyes were cold, the same way they were the night they buried Maria. At breakfast, Sophia tried to speak, her hands trembling around a cup of coffee. Eli, she began softly, I can't sleep. I keep hearing her, hearing things. Eli didn't look up from his phone. You're imagining it. It's not my imagination, she snapped, her voice cracking. She's in my head. I see her every time I close my eyes. Eli's expression hardened as he set his phone down. Then maybe you should stop feeling sorry for yourself, he said flatly. You made your choice. We both did. Sophia stared at him, tears welling. You said you loved me. Eli scoffed. Love? Don't be foolish. You were convenient. The words hit harder than any slap could have. She stood there, shaking, realizing in that moment that she wasn't his partner. She was just another tool. Another pawn. Across the city, Mr. Davis, Maria's lawyer, sat in his dimly lit office surrounded by papers, files, and screens full of data. He traced through forged documents, Eli's fake authorizations, Sophia's falsified witness signatures, and bank transactions funneling millions into hidden accounts. The deeper he looked, the worse it got. Eli hadn't just tried to murder Maria, he'd been draining her estate long before that night. Davis rubbed his temples. He's been planning this for years, he muttered. He picked up his phone and dialed Maria. She answered almost instantly. Tell me you found something. Oh, I found everything, he said grimly. Eli's entire empire is built on your money. Once this hits court, it'll destroy him. There was a pause. Then Maria's voice, calm but fierce, good. But I want him to see it crumble before he loses it. Back at the mansion, Sophia sat alone on the bed, staring at her reflection. Her face looked older now, haunted, empty. Her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. She hesitated before opening it. You can't bury the truth forever. Her heart stopped. She dropped the phone, backing away from it as if it were alive. Her breath came in sharp bursts. No, this isn't happening. She ran into the hallway, calling out for Eli. Eli. Someone's texting me, someone knows. He appeared at the top of the stairs, calm but irritated. You're losing it again. I'm not, she cried. Look. She handed him the phone. He read the message, his face tightening, just for a second. Probably a scam, he said, tossing it on the counter. Delete it. But later, when she left the room, he picked the phone up again. His hand trembled slightly. He knew that phrase. He'd whispered it himself the night of the burial, when he thought no one could hear. The next morning, Sophia's fear turned to shock when a uniformed courier arrived at the mansion. Delivery for Miss Sophia, he said, handing her an envelope. She tore it open, and her blood ran cold. A subpoena. Her name listed as a key witness in the investigation of Maria Morgan's estate and disappearance. She stumbled backward, nearly dropping it. No, this can't be happening. Eli entered the room just as she looked up, eyes wide with terror. Eli, she whispered, they're investigating. Eli's expression didn't change, but his jaw clenched. Say nothing, he ordered. I'll handle it. But Sophia could see it now, the first crack of fear behind his calm facade. And in that moment, for the first time, she realized the truth: Eli Morgan wasn't in control anymore. Something, or someone, was turning the tables. Sophia sat alone later that night, replaying the message over and over. "You can't bury the truth forever." Her phone buzzed again. A second message appeared. "See you soon, Sophia." The dark street outside, a figure standing in the rain, watching the mansion. "Comment where you're watching from, the tables are turning fast. Maria's not done, and neither is justice." The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, reporters scribbling notes, cameras flashing, and the sharp scent of anticipation filling the air. At the center of it all sat Eli Morgan, dressed in a tailored black suit and that same smug smile that had once fooled the world. His lawyer leaned over and whispered, "This will be over soon, Mr. Morgan. Once the estate is officially transferred, you'll be free to move on." Eli smirked. "I already have." He adjusted his cufflinks, confident, calm, unaware that fate was quietly rearranging the stage behind the courtroom doors. The judge entered, gavel striking sharply. "Court is now in session." The proceedings began with routine questions, evidence reviews, paperwork confirmations. Then the judge paused. "Before we proceed, the prosecution has called for an additional witness," he said, glancing toward the side door. Eli frowned. "What witness?" he whispered to his lawyer. The lawyer looked confused. "There wasn't supposed to be one." The bailiff opened the door. And the room fell silent. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. A soft gasp rippled through the crowd. There she was, Maria Morgan, standing in the doorway. Alive. She held her baby in her arms, dressed in a simple cream suit, her eyes calm but piercing. The baby cooed softly, the only sound in a courtroom that suddenly felt like the edge of the world. Reporters dropped their pens. A woman in the gallery screamed. Eli's hand went limp, the papers falling to the floor. His lips moved, but no words came out. Maria stepped forward slowly, each footstep echoing like a heartbeat. "Good morning, Your Honor," she said evenly. "I believe my husband has been handling my affairs in my absence." The judge blinked, visibly shaken. "Mrs. Morgan, you're alive?" Maria smiled faintly. "Apparently, that surprises a few people." Eli shot to his feet, voice breaking. This is impossible." "You're not real," she finished for him. "You said the same thing the night you buried me." The audience gasped again. Eli's lawyer tried to object, but the judge raised his hand. "Mr. Morgan, sit down." Eli did, though his legs were trembling. Sophia, sitting in the back row, covered her mouth, tears spilling uncontrollably. Maria's eyes met hers. One look was all it took, the weight of guilt crushed Sophia. She stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, I have to speak." Eli turned sharply. "Sophia, don't." But it was too late. Sophia stepped forward, voice shaking. "It was Eli. He planned everything. The insurance, the poisoning, the burial. I thought she was dead. I didn't know she was alive." Her confession poured out in gasps and sobs. The courtroom erupted into chaos, people shouting, cameras flashing, the judge hammering his gavel for silence. Eli buried his face in his hands, the mask finally shattering. For years he'd controlled everything, the narrative, the money, the fear. But now, standing before Maria's calm, unbroken gaze, he was just a man caught in his own trap. Maria took one step closer, eyes locked on him. "Do you know what's worse than being buried alive, Eli?" she asked softly. He looked up, broken. She leaned forward just slightly. "It's realizing that you buried your own soul long before that night." Her words landed like thunder, quiet, devastating, final. Eli's head dropped, the last trace of arrogance gone. Reporters rushed forward, the judge called for order, and the cameras captured the moment the world learned the truth. The widow was alive, and her betrayer was undone. Maria turned to the crowd, her baby resting peacefully in her arms, and exhaled a slow, trembling breath. Justice had a heartbeat again. As officers moved toward Eli, Maria's voice echoes. You buried your soul, Eli. Justice begins. If this moment shocked you, hit subscribe. You won't believe the ending. Maria's not done, and revenge has one more move. The final echoes of the gavel faded into the courtroom air, 3 sharp strikes that sealed Eli Morgan's fate. He sat motionless, staring ahead, face hollow, as the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions he no longer heard. The man who once controlled every move now sat powerless, his empire crumbling into dust. Sophia, in handcuffs, wept quietly behind him. The court had shown her leniency for her confession, but justice required its due. As she was led away, she turned to Maria and whispered through tears, "I'm sorry." Maria nodded softly. "So am I." It wasn't anger anymore, just closure. Weeks passed. The mansion that once symbolized Eli's power was now empty, sold to pay restitution. But elsewhere, new life was taking root. In a bright community center built on donated land, Maria and Hakim stood together beneath a fresh banner that read, "The Phoenix Foundation, for survivors who refuse to stay buried." Hakim smiled at her. "You sure you're ready for this?" Maria looked out at the crowd, women, children, families rebuilding from pain, and nodded. "I was ready the moment I opened my eyes in that coffin," she said quietly. Hakim chuckled softly. "Then let's bring some light to the world." Maria speaking to survivors, her baby, now smiling and strong, playing by her side, Sophia in a quiet prison library, teaching other women to read, her eyes carrying both guilt and grace, Eli alone in a gray cell, staring at a wall where no reflection stared back, and Hakim, now Maria's trusted friend and partner, planting a small garden beside the foundation's building, a symbol of life after darkness. Maria's voice began to tell the lines. You can't bury truth. You can only delay it. And sometimes, justice doesn't come with anger, it comes with peace. The world may forget your story for a while, but when the truth rises, it shines brighter than any lie. On her face, serene, strong, reborn. Her son reached out, touching her cheek, and she smiled, a real smile this time. The sun broke through the clouds as she whispered. We're free now. Where are you watching from? What lesson did you learn from Maria's story? Subscribe for more powerful stories where love and justice rise again.